Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have cards using the Brutus Monroe November 2019 inspiration box called Plaid Tidings. And if you missed the unboxing, I will have that linked down below, or you can just head back to my channel and go look for it. But yeah, we're going to go make a bunch of cards using it. All right, let's go ahead and get started with what we're making. I have started off with the Sweater Simple Blend, and I have taped over the little images down below so I don't get any embossing ink on them, but I'm using the Brutus Monroe embossing ink along with a mini ink blending tool, and I'm pouncing that color onto some of the red cardstock that came in this kit. You really can't see a whole lot of what I'm doing. It's sort of changing the color, but you'll be able to tell when I pull that stencil away. But I definitely wanted to use some Post-it tape to make sure I didn't get ink where I didn't want it. Now I'm putting this into a coffee filter, and I'm going to cover this with some Gilded Sparkle embossing powder. I thought if we're making a sweater, why don't we make this thing look a little bit funny? I would wear a sweater like this because, you know, it's just me, so I don't care. And now I'm going to heat emboss that, and I'm going to leave the embossing in here. I'm going to leave the heating because you can see the magic of the embossing. I never get tired of it. But yes, it will be gold and it'll have shimmer, and who wouldn't love a sweater like that, right? All right, I've cleaned off my stencil, and now I am going to use some more of that Post-it tape to tape down and around the little tree. I'm going to put a tree on the middle of my sweater using some Glacier paste, and this Glacier paste is the Green Envy Nuvo Glacier paste. It's new to me, but I've already kind of been playing with it, so I'm peeling back some of my press and seal. I'm using a palette knife, and I'm just going to scrape that across. I thought that that would be a fun addition. You could use some glitter glaze or chroma glaze, but I don't have any in the green color that I wanted. I have spring colors, and I just thought that may not work as well. So I don't know how long that stuff takes to dry, but while it's still wet, I am going to use my glitter duster, and I'm just going to kind of spray a little bit of glitter onto that tree because I wanted it to match the sweater. And so that's what we're going to do. I'll just shake off the excess, and look at how glittery that is. For my sentiment, I am going to take some of the black cardstock that came in the kit. I'll cover that with my magic powder bag to make sure I don't get embossing powder where I don't want it. And then I'm going to take the stamp that says Ho 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 from the stamp in the kit, and I'm going to ink that up using that same embossing ink. And then I will cover that with my white embossing powder. This is the Alabaster embossing powder by Brutus Monroe. And then I'll heat set that till that is smooth and melted. And then I'll pick up my mess, and while that is cooling, that's when I'll pick up my mess, and then once it's cool, I will wipe away the residue. I'm using liquid glue to adhere this down to the front of my card panel, and then I am going to attach that to some Raven cardstock. This is just a card base that I've made using the Raven cardstock, and it is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches all folded up. And then I'll use that same liquid glue to tack down my panel to my card base. And because this is black cardstock, you could use like a white gel pen on the inside, but I decided to cut down some white cardstock, and I cut that to 4 inches by 5 1/4, so it'll have a little black border. And I decided to take the stencil and just kind of sponge some fired brick distress ink over the top of that sweater. I don't need it to be perfect because this is where you're going to write, and I don't want it to be too dark because you're going to be writing over it. And so I'm kind of happy with the way that looks. I thought about putting something in the center, but I thought, nah, we'll let our writing be the center. So then I'll use that same liquid glue to adhere this to the inside of our card. And then once that is attached, I'm going to grab some Autumn Red Nuvo drops because I thought it needed a little extra. You can't just have a plain green tree on there, right? This is a Christmas sweater. So we're going to put 3 little dots of that. And then that's going to finish off card number 1. I love it. So you could use this for an ugly sweater card if you really wanted to, but I kind of like that sweater. For card number 2, we're going to do the old rock and roll technique. So I've grabbed out just my pad and my cover from my Misty just to give it a little bit more stability. And this is an old school technique. There are more updated ways to do it, but I'm going to do it the old school way because actually it's faster. So what you do is you're going to stamp your image on the lighter ink, and then you're going to bring in the darker ink and just roll the edges of your stamp on that darker ink. I am using Distress Oxide inks, and you may run the risk of contaminating a little bit, but I'm not worried about it because it's just such a minimal amount. This is why you go the lighter image and then to the darker ink like that, because that just tends to work out better. And like I said, you may run the risk, so do it at your own risk, of contaminating your stamp pads. I didn't have an issue with it. Now, the more updated way of doing it is to stick it into your MISTI and to stamp your image with your light ink, clean it off, and then use a sponge dauber or some sort of a sponge around the edges, and then stamp it back down again. But it does take some time to do that. And you'll see on my ink pad that I do have a little bit of transfer, but because they're sort of in the same color line, it's really not that big of a deal. The colors that I chose to use, that first color combo was Barn Door, and the darker one was Aged Mahogany. And this color combo is Mustard Seed, and the darker color is Brushed Corduroy. So I'm not really having any issue. This third color combo is Dried Marigold, and then my darker color is going to be Rusty Hinge. So I was going for more of an orange in this color palette, and I like the way that looks too. And I like how the Distress Oxides have that oxidized look. So here I am trying to use the sponge, and I'm just not really getting what I need. So I'm not worried about it. I'll just stamp them, and I don't even clean off my ink or my stamp for that second image. I just rock and roll and stamp it down. For my sentiment, I am just going to grab out some of that Ground Espresso Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to ink that up and stamp my sentiment down that says, "Always be thankful." And then I'm also going to use that same Ground Espresso to stamp out all the veins of the leaves. And I love this. They really, really come together now. You wouldn't necessarily have to add the veins if you didn't want to, because I think the card looks pretty without, but it's that final detail that just makes it look so, so nice. And then this ends up being a one-layer card, which I don't make very often, but it's really, really pretty. And this would be a very quick one to crank out a bunch of if you needed them. So I'm going to add one more bit of embellishment, and it's not Nuvo drops this time. I'm going to grab the yarn that came in the kit, and then I'll cut down what I think I need, and I'm just going to tie that basically into a bow. And then I'll manipulate that several times. And then that's not the side I want it on, because I want it, because the sentiment is on that lower right hand side. I want the bow to be on the upper left hand side, so your eye is drawn that way. And then that's going to finish off our one layer leaf card. So we did a little old school technique of rock and roll, and I think we came out with something fun. For card number 3, I had already stamped out my plaid image using the plaid stamp, and I just did this with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and it was super fast, super easy. And now I'm just putting this into my makeshift splatter box, and I'm going to stick my Sweater Simple Blend right over the top of that. I'm going to grab some Jack-O-Lantern Surface Spray, shake that up really, really good, and then I'll spritz that all over that sweater. I didn't go too heavy-handed. I just sprayed a couple of times. You could go heavier if you wanted to. The black will show through. And then I just removed my stencil, cleaned it off, and we'll get ready to move on to the next part. Now we're just going to fussy cut that sweater out, and because I'm so good at keeping it in the frame, which I'm not going to show you all the fussy cutting. I have a piece of black cardstock as one of my panels. I'm going to attach that to a white card base, and that's going to cover the whole front of that A2 size card. I did trim down a couple other pieces of black cardstock just as little strips, but I'm going to take this plaid paper that came in the kit, and I'm going to trim that down to be 4 inches by 5 1/4, so it'll have that black border around it when I attach it to the front. And I'm going to glue down my pieces. I just felt like that needed a little something more than just the sweater. And then, so a couple ways: you could just put your glue right onto your paper, or you could put it on your strip, however you want to do it. I did both. And then I'm going to take a look at how I want my sweater to be on there. For my sentiment, I'm going to use my magic powder bag over the bottom of that, which you don't see, but I did do it. And then I'm going to ink up the sentiment that says Happy Thanksgiving, and then I'll cover that with that Alabaster embossing powder. And then I'll heat set that till that is smooth and melted. And I didn't really add anything else. So yes, it says Happy Thanksgiving, and it's just a sweater. It's a plaid sweater. But, you don't have to have a turkey on there or leaves or whatever. I thought this was fun. It was a fun masculine type Happy Thanksgiving card because, My husband would never allow me to, dress him up for Thanksgiving or the holidays really, but I could just see a dude wearing this sweater and showing up to Thanksgiving dinner. Yeah, so we'll remove the foam tape that I put on the back of our sweater, and then we're just going to tack him down to the front, and that will actually finish off our card. So I think it's fun, easy card. You could replicate this and do all kinds of colors. Card number 4 is going to be a Christmas card. So we are going to use the baubles in the set. And I've just got a piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to use some old, well, they're not really old, they're recent ones, but they're embossing powders of the month. And this first one I'm going to use is called Blueberry Sparkle, and if these are available in the store, I will have them linked down below. And look at my lazy showing. I didn't want to use a coffee filter, so I tried to just do it right over the image, and I dumped it on my surface. Thankfully, it's that glass mat, so it's easy to just scoop onto another piece of cardstock and put it right back into my canister. But anyway, back to the stamping. So this first color was Blueberry Sparkle. I inked it up with my embossing ink and then just covered it with that Blueberry Sparkle. The next color that I'm going to be using is Crisp Leaves. And this one's pretty. It's almost like a burnt orange, it reminds me. And you'd think I would have learned. I didn't make a mess, like too much of a mess anyway. But I still didn't grab out a coffee filter. I still am showing my lazy. And then my third color that I'm going to use for one of the other baubles is the color Wicked. And now I've got a blue, orange, and a green one. And I think that's so fun. So fun. So if you have the embossing powders of the month, then pull them out and start making some Christmas ornaments with this set, because, oi, you could make so many pretty colors. And then once those are all smooth and melted, I'm going to fussy cut each one of those out. I did try, and it worked. I did try using my Unibel Signo gel pen on the bauble to give it like a reflective look. And so I'm going to set that off to the side to dry. I just did it on one for now. And then I'm going to start working on assembly of my card. So I'm kind of trying to see where I want the leaves and where I want placement of things. And then I'm going to stamp the sentiment, which says Season's Greetings. And I'm stamping that with the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. It's such a crisp, beautiful black ink. And then now is where I'll start putting on those leaves. And I'm just going to use some liquid glue to do this. And I'm not being real cautious with it. These leaves came in the kit, and I end up using all 5 of them. I want this to look like a couple of branches from a Christmas tree or something, even though I know that those clearly are not branches of a Christmas tree. You get the gist, because you could hang ornaments on any tree you wanted, doggone it. And I did end up putting foam tape on the back of all the baubles, but I decide on that green one I want that to be in the background, so I do just take the foam tape off of the back, and then I use the liquid glue to adhere it right down to the card base itself. So then that blue one can go kind of on top. And so that gives you a sense of dimension and just depth in the card, which is nice. And then I'm going to grab my Memento pen, and I am going to draw some lines, like some string. I made a mistake there. I decided to try and put it on the inside of that hole for the bauble. That obviously did not work. I will fix it with my white gel pen. That works out fine, but you get the gist here. And afterwards, I do end up taking my Clear Star Sakura Jelly Roll Pen and adding some little stars all over. And you'll see that in the final picture. But here I'm just adding those reflective lines to the baubles and thinking that was going to be it after I turn everything over and trim off all of the excess. It wasn't, though. I turned off the camera, and that's when I drew a bunch of little stars, which were easy, just, lines. I didn't do like the normal stars that we learned to draw when we were younger. But isn't that fun? You could do that with all kinds of colors. So there are my stars, and there's my fun Christmas card. For card number 5, I wanted to try something with those aqua pigments. I normally paint with them right onto my watercolor paper, but this time I wanted to try stamping with them. So I am putting those 2 colors just onto my glass mat on the side, and I have a piece of watercolor cardstock that I have cut down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. And then I'm just going to lay the stamps down that I want to use. And I'm using the leaves because I thought those would be so pretty with these orange and red aqua pigment. So I am taking my paintbrush, has a little bit of water on it, not much, and I'm just painting that right on to those leaves. And then I'm going to spritz those with a couple spritzes of water, not a lot. I don't want it to be too wet. but I do want to just wet it down a little bit, and then I'm going to stamp that. And then I'll pick up the door of my MISTI, and oh, I'm liking it. So I was just experimenting with this. And now I'll just clean off my stamps, and then I will rearrange the stamps again, putting those in different places using different leaves. And I'll use red for the far one, and then I decide to kind of combine the two colors and use that on that dark, or that one leaf, so it'll get a little bit of a darker color. And then I'll stamp it down doing the same thing. And I love how it leaves like darker areas where the water pools. I think that's so cool. It gives it this watercolor look, because that's obviously what I'm going for. And then I'll put down some more leaves. I'm going to push this all the way to the top. And the only reason why I'm doing it in the MISTI this way is just in case I don't get a decent stamp, but I found that it really didn't matter because I didn't want my images to be perfect anyway. I mean, obviously, because I'm stamping them with watercolor. And so the thing about these watercolors that is just so cool, these aqua pigments, is that these ones have some mica in them, so they are going to be super, super shimmery. So I'll clean those off one more time, add one more stamp so that I have a little bit more of that red in there. And then I'll do the exact same thing with that last leaf, and then stamp it down. I love it. This just turned out so, so pretty, I think. So then now I'm going to put this into my makeshift splatter box, because I have plenty of that aqua pigment just sitting there, and I'm going to splatter that all over the background. And I like that look too. Goodness knows I love some splatter. And then I'll hit that with my heat tool, but take a look at the amount of shimmer on there. Is that not beautiful? Oh my goodness. I'm going to take some aqua pigment in the color Brass now, because I want to stamp those veins. And instead of putting this into my MISTI, I thought I would try stamping it with a stamp block. So this just will show that you can do it this way. And I'm going to grab the vein that I need, pick it up with my stamp block, and I'm going to paint it onto the stamp. And that works out just fine. But then I thought I would try just stamping right into the aqua pigment and see how that works. And it works great. I mean, it's not a perfect image, which is I don't want. It ends up making it look so painterly, and I love it. And so I just continue to ink it that way and stamp down and let the paint do the work. So this is definitely going to be a do again technique. But I don't know, have you guys tried this before? Is this something, that you've done, or is this a brand new? I mean, I don't know that I've seen anybody do it, but it's fun. Definitely very fun, and I love the look of it. All right, so for my sentiment, I am going to take the Always Be Thankful stamp, and I'm actually going to stamp that onto some of that brown cardstock. I had trimmed it in half. That came in the kit, so I'll use one as like a base around my watercolor paper, and then the other one is where I'm going to stamp using that embossing ink, and then I'm going to cover that with some Gilded embossing powder, which is a gold embossing powder by Brutus Monroe. And little bit of disclosure, I am watching Christopher do one of his lives right now. So this is the one where he's kind of talking about his favorite things, and he's talking about the Black Friday sales just a little bit. He's not really going into too much detail, but and at the same time he is stamping or making a card. I don't know if you guys watch his lives, but you really need to. One, he's super fun, and his cards are always great, but he's so entertaining, and it's just a great community to be around all the rest of the Brutus Monroe fans and chat it up in there. I get in there whenever I can. I can't always do it, but he typically does it at night and a little bit later at night, so I get in there when I can, and that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm crafting, and I am watching his live and responding when I can. And Christopher, if you happen to be watching this, you are a rock star. Keep it up. All right, so now I'm just assembling my card, just using some liquid glue. I'm going to put some foam tape on the back of my sentiment. I'll peel off all of that backing paper, and then I'm going to just attach this down to the front. And I thought about adding more to it, but honestly, with all that shimmer on the background, I thought this is it. This is great. And so that's going to finish off card number 5. I love all of that shimmer, and I'm definitely going to be doing that technique again. I kind of lost track of how many cards I made, so you're getting card number 6 now. And I'm going to start off with some milled lavender distress ink, and it doesn't look like I'm doing much, but I am just ink blending that all over that foilable. I don't foil this one. I do foil a different one. I don't show you the foiling, but I will show that card at the end because I have 3 little bonus cards for you. But I'm just putting that milled lavender all over that background. And like I said, it doesn't look like much, but I am doing it. And I wanted it to kind of match that glitter stock. And as you notice, I did cut a rectangle out of that glitter stock. So this glitter stock is the glitter stock that came in the kit, and I cut it in half. So I'm going to have a nice border around my ink blended piece. And then, because I, like I said, don't like to waste even a bit of that, I cut some out of the center so I can use that to cut my circle. And so that's what that's going to look like. But here I am cutting out my circle, and you can see I've got my phone sitting there. I'm watching Christopher. So like I said earlier, it's fun. Just, you know, even if you just have it setting up as you're doing something else, here he is making his card. And like I said, talking about Black Friday just a little bit. But yeah, so there's my circle, and I have a piece of vellum. This is some heat-resistant vellum by Brutus Monroe, and I'm going to stamp the sentiment Season's Greetings. And this is a little bit of a non-traditional Christmas card, obviously, because I'm using purples, and I'm going to bring in just a little bit of mint. But I covered that with the Alabaster embossing powder, and I'm heat setting that with my powder, or my heat gun. And then I'm going to fold this around that edge. There's just a little lip on each side of that. And I had covered the back, just the edges, with some score tape, and so I'm going to peel off that score tape on those edges and adhere the edges of the vellum to that bit right there, so that way it won't go anywhere. Because if you try to put like any sort of adhesive behind or on the front of your piece, if you don't have anything to cover that, it is going to show through, because vellum is obviously see-through. That's the point of it. So I've peeled off all the rest of that backing paper, and I'm going to adhere that down to my glitter stock. And I didn't put the circle down first, so I'm going to shimmy that in there. So I'll cover that with some liquid glue and just kind of poke that behind. And I'm using some mint. I don't remember the exact name, but I will have that listed down below. And I'm making leaves, so I am just putting down a little dot and spreading that out with the tip, because I want to make some almost like modern looking Art Deco holly leaves and holly berries. So it says Season's Greetings, and yeah, that's going to finish off our card. So there's card number 6, and like I said, I'll show you some bonus ones that I made. This first bonus one uses some white, the Alabaster Pigment ink along with the Alabaster embossing powder to make our sweater. This next one uses the gold static foil, so I did foil one of the foilables, and I only did part of it, but I sprayed it first with some Locomotive surface spray and used the extra sentimental stamp set on that. And this ugly sweater card uses some Aubergine surface spray over the top of one of those foilables, and I used some Nuvo expanding mousse over the top of the sweater. So let's go ahead and take a look at all the cards that I made for you today. I would love to know which one of these was your favorite, if you had a favorite. There's so many possibilities with this box that it's just incredible. And if you like that stamp set, if this kit is still available, you definitely want to jump on it. So I'll have it linked down below along with all the other products that I used if they're available. And yeah, so tell me which one you liked down below if you had a favorite. And like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, guys, I appreciate all of your love, your support, using the links that I have, and all your commenting and everything like that. You guys are the best. So thank you for stopping by.